Hey, remember when there was a kerfuffle at SHOT Show 2025 because Staccato was outflanked on their HD lineup because two small 1911 shops were doing Glock Mag 1911s before Staccato did? One was Stealth Arms with their Platypus, but at the more affordable price point was Fusion Firearms with their XP Pro. And I first showed you guys that gun back in November of 24. So buckle up because I'll tell you about the Fusion XP Comp, how it compares to the original XP Pro. I'll shoot it side by side with the Staccato XC, which is an excellent gun as well. But you're going to want to stick around and understand some of the quirks at getting one of these bad boys up and running. Either way, the Fusion XP Comp is an absolute joy to shoot, and we're going to talk about it now. Real quickly, this is a disclosure. Fusion Firearms did send this gun in for video. No money changes hands or anything like that. Again, check out the negatives. You'll see what I mean. But there's no guarantees of positive coverage. However, I will say my opinion of the gun is largely very positive. So what the gun is basically a single action only 4.6-inch barrel gun with a steel subframe with an aluminum modular grip and a compensator at the end of the barrel retained by a pin with 2 set screws. And there's no threading, so I'm not a lawyer, but I would expect that the restricted states would likely be okay with this muzzle device since it's not attached by threading. But, you know, check your local laws. What's more interesting is the delivery method for this gun, because Fusion is a 1911 shop in Venice Beach, Florida. Bob, who is their proprietor, has a deep history in the 1911 game. He was making 1911s. He teamed up with Airmox out of Turkey, who could hit a lower price point on something like this. But the gun is serviced through a 1911 shop in Florida if there were warranty claims or anything like that. So it's kind of a cool sort of hybrid model where you can get kind of a lower price but still get good customer service as well. I haven't had to get into the customer service yet, but if you have, leave your comment below just to let everyone know what you saw. The price point on the gun is, this is a hard chrome model, which is interesting because hard chrome is a dying finish and it is one of my favorite weapons finish. It's super hard. It does really well in both, you know, impact and sliding resistance. So it just, the finish holds up really, really well. For a high burn gun, hard chrome is going to be the best finish you can get on it. It's going to stand up to holster wear, and it wipes clean just because, you know, it is shiny. It'll show you where the carbon's on it, so it's easier to keep the guns clean so you don't end up with, you know, carbon smudges on stuff that you thought was a clean gun. But it's hard chrome applied over a tinifer finish. All of the gun's base finish is tinifer. And if you get hard chrome, it's applied over the tinifer finish. So it's really cool. You're going to want to know more about that here at the end of the video. And the uptick in price for the hard chrome finish is only $50. The base model of the XP Comp is going to run about $1450, and the hard chrome version is just under $1,500. So it is an attainable sort of dream gun status. It's something that people could afford. It's basically 3 plastic pistols, and it is an absolutely killer range gun. I think it only came with 1 magazine. I honestly don't remember because I opened the box and immediately threw the magazine in with my pile of Glock magazines and didn't remember which one it was. I think it's like a KCI mag. It basically looks like a Glock OEM mag, but there's no like branding on the bottom of the magazine.
Hell yeah, that gun's awesome to shoot.
But magazines are, you know, inexpensive, and generally everyone's got a bunch of them. And because it has a 1911 style mag catch, which means rather than going inside the gun and knocking that weird spring over to the side to get the mag catch to come out, it's got a 1911 style mag catch. It is probably steel. I'm assuming it's steel and not aluminum, which means you can use the Mech Guard Glock mags, which are my favorite Glock mags, even though they don't work in some of the Glock clone guns.
Definitely work, which means that the best 140mm magazine combination will work in the XP Pro, so that's good news.
They work really good in the Staccato HD series of pistols and guns like this. Shooting the gun is exactly what you want to see. It is absolutely brilliant. It's a super soft shooting gun. When you're shooting fast, it is an absolute pleasure to shoot. Initially, what you'll probably find, because this was the case with me, is because the comp is so effective, you're going to return the gun low because your grip is actively trying to return the gun. You're going to have to ease off on your grip so you get the gun to come back to where it's aimed at, because the comp is ridiculously effective. I really do think that if you're an IDPA competitor and you're kind of jonesing for a Staccato XE style gun, This gun is basically going to get you the same thing at about a third of the price as far as performance is concerned. And the gun is appropriately weighted for IDPA because the bare gun with the optic and no magazine is coming in at 40.3 ounces on my kitchen scale, which if you add a couple ounces for a Glock mag is comfortably under the weight limit for carry optics. Out of the box, it does come with an RMR plate that does have a rear sight that does co-witness. This Cyelee Wolf that you see on here is perfectly co-witnessed with the iron sights. They're very low in the window, which is exactly what you want to see. I did test the gun with 4 different types of magazines, the Glock OEM, the Magpul, the Mechgar, and the KCI, which I think is what it ships with. The gun functions with all of the magazines. I did run into some issues with lighter loaded ammo. The KCI specifically wouldn't lock the slide to the rear, but I didn't have that issue with any of the other 3 mags that I mentioned. And what I did notice out of the gun is that the ejection is coming back, if you were to kind of put a clock overhead and where the brass is landing, it's coming back at about the 4 o'clock, 4:30 position. It's not like brass to face level, but it is coming back at the shooter kind of over your right shoulder a little bit, which can cause issues. We'll get into it. I say all that to say, because you notice right now in the studio, I have a Cyelee Wolf on the gun, whereas previously in the shooting footage, I had the Fusion Firearms XP, which is an SRO style optic. More on that in a bit. Let's talk about shooting the guns sort of side by side with the Staccato XC. Now what's nutty is the footage you're seeing hasn't been like frame matched to get the guns to recoil. I shot basically the same splits with both guns, and you can see how the guns move around. There's not a big difference between how the slide is moving and how much the muzzle is oscillating when the slide closes, which is a high compliment because the Staccato XC is one of the best shooting 2011s on the market, in my opinion. But from behind the gun, I had this to say.
I didn't expect this, but I was surprised. I think that this gun, thanks to the smaller expansion port, might be a little bit softer shooting than the XC. Definitely in the same ballpark. It didn't look like the XP Comp threw the brass as far as the Staccato. It definitely has less of a hit in the hand than the XC did. So very comparable to the Staccato XC for about a third the cost. That's insane.
So considering that it is an all machined gun, meaning that all of the internals are made out of billet, there's no metal injection molding or anything like that, you're getting a very, well-built gun for a very reasonable price. I do want to talk about what is different between the original Fusion XP Pro and the new XP Comp, because I did mention that it is a nicer gun, and let's kind of get into it. Going kind of top to bottom, on the original XP Pros, the slide serrations at the front, which is how I manipulate the slides on all my guns, they were kind of slick. The Tinifer kind of exacerbates that because it's kind of a slick finish. So like for this gun, I generally use the optic to rack it, which isn't great, but it works. But they updated those on the new XP Comp to a very functional traction. It's just much, much nicer. So that was awesome. Coming down the gun, the next thing that changed is actually the shape of the slide stop lever. The slide stop levers on the XP Comp I actually like better because I can have the gun in a firing grip and drop the slide with my strong hand thumb. And with the new shape of the XP Comp's slide, I can't really do it. I have to tilt the gun in my grip to get it to drop. So from a sporting perspective where you want to do fast reloads and drop the slide on new mags, you're going to have to do a traditional like 19-20-11 thing and use your support thumb or rack the slide, whatever you want to do. But coming down onto the grip, this is where I get really, really positive about the gun. There are generally 2 camps of people who really geek out about triggers and people who are more enlightened and understand that grip is more important. The grip is significantly better on the XP Comp. The triggers are actually the same. Like the pull weight is basically identical between these 2 guns, but the grip significantly improved. And what changed on the grip is the checkering on the front strap and the mainspring housing is more bitey, which is good because kind of front to back, it's going to stabilize the gun so it doesn't want to twist as much in your hand. But more importantly, on the side, which is where the original XP Comp was a little bit slick, and it actually steps down. There's 2 thicknesses in the gun, like up at the top, and then it kind of tapers down at the bottom of the grip. Where the grip screws go in to secure the grip to the subframe, it's fatter, and then it gets thinner down at the bottom toward the magwell. On the new gun, it's a uniform thickness all the way up and down the slide, and the traction is like an aggressive medium texture, so that it actually provides excellent traction for your support hand. So because it's fatter, I can get my support hand behind the gun a little bit better, and then what contact I'm making with the grip is rewarded, so when the gun tries to rotate, it's actually letting my support hand kind of counteract the rotation of the gun, with a compensator, makes the gun a ridiculously nice shooting gun. So I really, really like the grip of the gun. It is a notable improvement, and my hat's off to the guys at Airmox and Fusion for updating it. It's a huge improvement, and I think it's great. Now, no gun is perfect, so let's talk about some of the negatives that I encounter with the gun. The first one is gonna be kind of preference. So this gun, and I think it's just this particular gun because I don't have the issue on this one, but there's a little bit of creep on the trigger, which means when I get on the wall, or what I think is the wall, I keep applying a little bit of pressure, and then there's a false wall kind of lets go, and there's the actual wall, which is hard to get at, which means for like precision group shooting where you're kind of trying to prep and press, you can't get all of the accuracy out of the gun. At least I couldn't. And that's why I didn't show you the groups I attempted to shoot with it, because I was getting better groups out of the gun when I was shooting rapidly. I couldn't get them into slow fire. And so the little bit of creep in the trigger, it's something a gunsmith could clean up. It's not that big a deal, but you know, out of the box, it's there. But at speed, I didn't have an issue with it. Similarly, on the trigger profile, it's got like heavily beveled edges on the trigger, and I prefer actually like ridges at the edge of the trigger, so I know where the edge of the trigger is, and I feel like I've got a better grip on the trigger face. When you're doing trigger slapping, I just feel like I have more control when there's a little bit of like a ridge raised at the edge of the trigger. It's a weird thing, but I like that more than I like kind of a rounded edge trigger. And that's extremely personal, so you may love what they put in there. So you notice the different optic that's on the gun and not the Fusion claw, and that's because the ejection does kind of come out of the gun like this, which means that when the optic's sitting on top of the gun, I was getting brass kind of rebounding. There's actually, I don't know if it's gonna show you, but there's actually like marks on the bottom of the housing where brass was rebounding off this optic, and what would happen is brass would get trapped in the ejection port.
Whoop, caught off the optic again. Oh. The optic caught one of the pieces of brass.
It's not the gun doing it, it's the brass coming off the optic doing it. So I had to swap the optic to something that's not getting over the ejection port because of how the brass is going. Now, ever since I changed it, because I had the gun out about 5 times, I only filmed 2 or maybe 3 of the trips to the range. And that was an issue that I encountered kind of the early days, but then once I changed the optic, the issue went away entirely. And if you look at the geometry of the ejector, you understand why the brass goes the direction it goes. You can see that that kind of like top right corner, if you're behind the ejector, is heavily relieved, so that's going to affect the trajectory of the brass coming out of the gun, and that's why it moves like it does. Probably the most notable issue with the gun is that specifically the hard chrome ones do have a break-in period. The issue that I was getting is that the gun would just hang out of battery just a slight bit, not to where it would go off or anything, but you know, you would have to kind of tap it in when the gun was like brand new, even when it was well lubricated. It wasn't an all the time thing, but it did kind of happen. And what I believe is happening here is the gun is designed around having the tinnifer finish, because if I wiggle the slide on the XP, it is notably wigglier than it is on, that's a new word I just made up. It's just a tighter feel on the chrome version of the gun. So I do think that with the chrome version specifically, there is gonna be a little bit of a break-in period. And what I found worked to kind of break it in, and what I'd recommend is they sell the XP Pro spring pack, which absolutely works in this gun. It's what's in the gun currently. It's like a 7, 9, 10, and like a 14-pound spring or something like that. Is I put the 14-pound recoil spring in and just kind of broke the gun in, and the gun was 100% with that 14-pound spring in, and then after it was kind of running nice, I stepped it back down to the 10, which felt a little bit more athletic, put the gun back in battery a bit quicker. Not as soft and flat as going down to like a 7, but at the same time, I kind of prefer the way the 10 shot, so that's what's in the gun currently. So the recoil spring pack, just immediately swap to the heavy spring and go through a couple hundred rounds and the gun will be squared away. So there's that, just something you need to be aware of. The reliability for the gun I noticed was actually pretty good based on the range of ammo we shot. Like my typical ammo I like to use for reviews is Buffalo Creek 115s. They are a really nice kind of soft shooting range load. 115 loaded about 1150 foot per second, which is kind of where you want it to be out of a 4-inch gun. Buffalo Creek is a supporter of the channel, so thank them for that. And if you want to be supported, BC, then maybe check this out. But then my buddy Danny, who loads his own defensive ammunition, which may or may not be advisable, loads pissing hot self-defense rounds. And what do I mean by that? He's got 115 jacketed hollow points at 1400 foot per second at the muzzle. And this gun ran those no problem. In fact, it was very pleasant to shoot. All the gas in those loads worked the comp really, really well. It stayed flat. It was more of a hit in the hand, but I mean, it went from like range loads all the way up to super spicy loads using that same, it was a 10-pound recoil spring in the gun at the time. Ran like a top, so absolutely fantastic. So that all said, with those negatives, would I be scared off of this gun? Absolutely not. I really think that this is one of the nicer shooting range guns, especially given the price point, that you can check out. And it is really good for like IDPA bros who want to take that leap into the single action only space, but are afraid of the price tag associated with it, especially getting a comped gun. I think it's a really awesome gun. I'm also really excited to see that, you know, they're continuing to develop the gun, the updated grip features and everything. The updated slide serrations are great. And like one thing that they're doing is they've got like a custom finish option. And if you check out some of these finishes they're putting on the guns, you can get like a dream gun for less than like $2. They've got really unique finishes that'll make the guns absolutely stand out at the range. And I think it's cool that they're doing kind of like an everyman sort of dream gun sort of thing without, you know, that $4,000 or $5,000 price tag. So it's really awesome. Kind of that hybrid delivery model is a really good value to kind of your average shooter. So I'm excited to see what Fusion Firearms and AirMox continue to do with this platform. I think it's honestly really quite good. It's more of an everyman sort of 2011 style gun that takes, you know, inexpensive magazines. So it's pretty awesome. If you want to learn more about the original XP Pro, you can watch out my video on that here. And as always, I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.